Is it way too meta if I say this is absolutely one for the collection? So the collection tells the story of Arkin teamed with a group of mercenaries trying to raid the collector's hideout and save his latest victim. Finally, we are talking about the collection, the last review that I have to do before 31 on 31 drops tomorrow afternoon. That is right, people, do not miss it. All three of our videos drop tomorrow. I'll go ahead and put this graphic up here that will show you the times, but as of right now, at 11 a.m. Eastern, you got Brian's. At 1 p.m. Eastern, you got CP's. And then closing off with mine at 3 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe to all of our channels if you have not already, and get your asses ready for 31 on 31. So excited to finally debut this to all of you. Now, talking about this movie, The Collection, if you've seen my previous review, I was a pretty big fan of The Collector, always have been, and The Collection when it came out was a nice surprise for me because The Collector could have just been a nice little one and done solitary horror film and been just fine as far as its legacy goes, as far as I'm concerned. But the fact that they actually got the money, a little bit more money this time around, to follow up that story, do a sequel, and then now eventually we're going to be getting a third one, hopefully sometime next year. It's very exciting for me because the first one had so much potential, and it's not oftentimes, especially with some of these lower budget horror films, that studios will believe in that potential and give you a sequel, especially not one as damn good as The Collection. So starting right off with the positives for The Collection, I gotta say I love the fact that they took the James Cameron approach with this sequel, the T2, the Aliens approach, and that's go bigger, go badder, or go home. The Collection is a much bigger movie, it's a much more action-filled movie, the scale is larger, the budget's obviously bigger, there's a little bit more nastiness, the Collector is much more of a threat in this one, and they kind of expand on what all this guy has been doing a little bit. Arkin gets a lot more to do aside from just survive in this little isolated house. Now he's got an isolated hotel to run around in. It's just a bigger, meaner sequel. And while talking about Arkin, I'm glad they decided to bring him back and make him the protagonist once again. You could have just had him be killed off following the events of the first film, and it would have made perfect sense given the way that that film ended, but they decided not to do that very wisely. They brought him back, put him right back into the fold where he is now being forced to lead a group of mercenaries to the Collector's hideout, kind of show them what the Collector does, run them around this fucked up little hotel of horrors and try to take this guy out. And it's just another great story following Arkin as a character where he's once again stuck in the situation that he didn't want to be in, and he's trying to survive while trying to take down the Collector. And he's just one of those protagonists that you don't get very often in horror or slasher films where you really root for them the entire time. They have a nice character arc, they have a really good moral code, and they're a nice little dichotomy to your antagonist.
Come on! Come on inside this cage, bitch! Come on! I'd love to fucking have a piece of you! Come on, man! I'll fucking eat your heart! I'll tear it out of your fucking throat!
And once again, maybe not quite as strongly, which I'll get into in a little bit, but very, very effectively, Arkin is that good side of the coin that a movie like this so desperately needs. And the Collector is just as badass as ever. He gets a lot more to do in this one. He's not necessarily just kind of walking around a house and setting traps and waiting for them to kind of unfold. Now they're on his territory, and he's got little demons that he's kind of like, people that he's manipulated and tortured to the point where they're like zombie slaves for him. He has fully coherent humans walking around, like this one little dolled up chick that is trying to kind of manipulate people for the Collector's bidding. He's got his little actual collection, like body parts and bones and weird little abstract macabre art all over the place. He's got dogs, he's got big ass machine guns. I mean, this guy is out to fuck these guys up the entire movie. He's just as intimidating and scary, possibly even more of a physical threat. I know Brian Lomax pointed out that he might be just slightly larger in this one. There are two different actors playing it from the first film to this one, so possibly they hit it pretty well in my opinion, but he's a bigger threat. And to me, he's just as intimidating, just as iconic, and just as badass as he was in the first film. The movie's also got a lot more excitement to it. The first one is much more kind of your Home Alone from hell, if you will, where it's much more of an isolated thriller with a lot more psychological shit going on, a lot more like slow burn tension. And this one is much more action-centric. There's a lot more gunplay. There's a lot more people getting taken out left and right. There's a bigger group of people trying to take out the Collector. The movie even opens with a gigantic action horror extravaganza massacre involving this thresher blade that just wipes out like hundreds of people in this dance floor of a nightclub. This movie is just way more fast-paced, it's bigger, and for some, it might be more entertaining for that. Just depends on what your tastes are, what you like from your horror films. Like I said, this one takes the Cameron approach to a sequel. And all of the great direction that Marcus Dunstan brought to the first film, he brings back over to this. You still get a lot of great camera work, some really nice shots, some nice use of color here and there, the way that they've framed and kind of used set design to build out this Collector hotel hideout thing that they're taking place most of the film in, and even to the fact where you get like callbacks to the first film where like a trap gets set off and you follow around Fast and Furious style to all the different aspects of this trap, where you follow the line to the gear to the other line, and you kind of go through the whole motion before the trap gets set off. That's still another nice little signature camera move that I liked from the first film, and they brought it back over to here.
You're gonna die! You're gonna die!
And you even get some more iconic shots. Like I love the shot when the Collector kicks open the door and he's got the machine gun in his hand, his dogs are right there next to him, and the use of light behind him is just a badass shot. Like that right there, you could just show that clip to somebody like, okay, now watch this franchise. And most people probably would be sold by that shot alone. And finally, the collection has one of my favorite horror movie endings of all time. Not trying to overhype it if you have not seen it. I would suggest you just go ahead and watch the movie now instead of going on with this review, because I will be probably spoiling things here and there. But involving the way that they end this movie, to me, they take an approach that so many horror films, and especially so many slasher films, just never had the balls to do, and that's to full-on show your protagonist get the better of the antagonist and use his own skills against him. I just thought that was a kick-ass, surprising way to end this film. You get to a certain point where the Collector is set on fire, and it's building things up in like the Collector's defeat and Arkin's ultimate victory, and then you get that classic kind of cliche shot where he sees the mask on the ground, and it's like, oh, the evil lives on. And that's one of my least favorite horror cliches, especially in slasher films, where it's like, okay, how the fuck did he survive that? That's bullshit. You're just trying to inch through another sequel. You could have ended it better. And then they flip it on its head and they pull the rug out from under you. And in the theater, I was like, wait, where are we at now? And they show the Collector walking up the stairs in his own house. The radio gets turned on and he's like, what the hell's going on? And Arkin collects his ass. So searches for him, hunts him down, sticks a gun in his face, smacks him right in his fucking jaw, and collects his ass, setting us up for either a great ending to these two films or a great way to build for a third and probably final film in this trilogy. And to me, it's not only a great way to end this film, it's just a badass ending to a horror film.
Are you here to kill me? No. That'd be too nice. First, I'm gonna make you feel everything that I felt. And then I'm gonna kill you. So that you can never hurt anyone.
Now moving on to the negatives, and the big one for me is that this film really stretches plausibility. I talked about it a little bit in The Collector, where the amount and the extravagancy of the traps that the Collector was able to put into this house in the short amount of time that he actually had did stretch plausibility quite a bit, but if you can get past it, it's still a very cool, isolated horror film. You get into the collection, and they turn that shit up to 11. There's not only many more traps, like even the opening sequence in the nightclub, so extravagant of a death trap to where it's like, man, I don't know if this guy could ever pull this off in a year by himself. So I don't know, it really stretches your believability. But again, if you can get past it, it's still a fun blast of a movie to go on. And it's not something that detracts the movie a lot for me. It is just one of those things that stands out where it's like, okay, now you're really pushing it. There's even some things later on in the film where like Arkin breaks his forearm to be able to get a trap door opened up. And then he gets into a fight with the Collector 3 minutes later and starts beating the Collector's ass when all the Collector would have to do is grab that fucking arm and There's a shot where the Collector walks into a room and like throws a lasso on a chick's leg, and in the same swing of his arm hooks it up top, and like I guess just the force of him swinging it like this lifts her off of her feet. And there's just a lot of bullshit moments like that where you know now what type of movie you are in. It's a very grounded, gritty type film like the first one is, and to me that's why these things stand out a little bit more. It's not quite as excusable to just say, oh, I'm in a horror slasher film, physics don't exist. In a grounded movie like this, it should exist. And this movie just blurs those lines a lot more than the original did. Second negative for me is basically all of the mercenary characters. I like the Lucello character, he's alright, he has a nice little redemption at the end there, but even throughout most of the film I don't even like him so much, and it's because they're basically cannon fodder. You don't learn anything about them, you don't really know anything as far as their relationships, why they're working for Christopher McDonald, how long they have been. You get Lucello's motivation, that's it. The rest of them are just there to get fucked up throughout this movie. But what makes them unlikable is that they are complete assholes to Arkin the entire movie. They literally abduct this dude from the hospital. They tell him, just show us where we're gonna go, we're gonna take care of it. And then they force him to come in and don't even offer him any way to protect himself, and they're just dicks to him for the entire runtime of the movie until literally it's Lucello and Arkin left, and he has no choice but to trust in him to a certain degree. So it just bugs me when you have such a likable character like Arkin and everybody's a dick to him. It just makes you dislike everybody, and it kind of makes you want the Collector to fuck them up the entire movie, which he does. And my final negative, which is the smallest one, but it's also the one that actually might bother me the most out of these three. And that's the fact that there's some continuity issues story-wise from the Collector to the Collection. In the Collector, the big plot that sets this whole thing off and sets off our character Arkin onto the path that gets him into the Collector's lair in this house and in these traps is that his wife has this debt to some kind of a mob boss or some kind of a criminal outfit, and he has to get money quick to save her life because once the clock strikes midnight, they're coming for her ass, and the daughter's gonna be there, and it's just gonna be hell on earth, and it makes you really believe that death is imminent if he does not get this money by midnight. And he never did, because his ass got collected. So the fact that they start this movie off and 1, nothing ever happened to his wife or his daughter, 2, they don't even really mention his daughter, 3, they start this off, she's there, she's in the hospital, presumably days later, and no mention of the debt, no mention of the impending death. It's just, he's sitting in the hospital and he's like, all right, go, you need to go to your mother's, which is, I believe, is something he told her in the first film is pointless to do because they're just gonna find you there. So the fact that they just kind of wiped clean that entire storyline when they could have easily resolved it with just a line of dialogue, like Lucello could have came in and say, hey, we paid off your wife's debt, we're gonna expunge your record if you help us. And there you go. I'm on board with it. I can believe that, I can roll on with this story, but the fact that they tie these movies so closely to each other, but just wipe out that very huge plot element from the first movie as if it never existed, it stands out to me and it bugs the living piss out of me every single time I watch the Collection. But all in all, guys, this is a great horror sequel. To me, it's almost as good as the Collector, just slightly not as good as the first one, just because of some of those logic issues and that big plot element that I feel like was kind of inexcusable to wipe out. But moving past that, it's a kick-ass, action-filled, bigger, meaner sequel. The Collector is even better in this film as a villain, I think. Arkin, just as strong as a character. A lot more things to do, a lot more things to see along the plot of this film. It's a much more entertaining ride, if you will. Just a badass follow-up to The Collector. So if you're a fan of the first film and you want to see where these characters go and how much meaner things can get, the Collection absolutely delivers on all of that. So add this bitch to your collection and go out and buy it. So what do you guys think of the collection? Are you a fan of this one? Do you feel like it's as good or better than the first film, or do you feel like it takes a gigantic dip in quality? Let me know. Are you excited for The Collected, the third film that I think should come out next year, if not, maybe 2021. We'll find out. But are you excited for that one? And are you excited for 31 on 31 dropping tomorrow? Let me know that shit down in the comment section below. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you are not already a subscriber. If you guys want to check out some social media links, you can check those out by checking the video description below, like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And my Patreon page, which is a great way to give back to this channel and help this channel grow and get cool exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. Also below that is my Teespring store, which has all my merchandise designs. There's a couple 31 on 31 designs down there. There's the Autop Stream logo. There's some older designs like a Chucky design and a guitar design and everything down there. There's a lot of really cool logos and things to throw some merchandise on down there, so check that out, guys. And if you want to check out some more of my videos and get ready for 31 on 31, you can check out those videos by clicking right over here.